Hi, welcome back to another conversation. Um, I've been thinking, and I wanted to make a video about why I believe, or not even that I believe, that I know, why I know that you matter. Like, why you, the person who are watching this right now, wherever you are, you matter. Not in any conditional or material sense, but just in terms of being and existing, which is enough. So, why do I think this? I think I've got a pretty well reasoned um, case for why this makes enough sense. I guess I have an addiction to reason and logic and truth, and something I'm trying to recover from. But I think this is an honest enough account of why that's true. In any case, I want to start with a paraphrase of something Nietzsche once said. Friedrich Nietzsche, and he said that if you've ever said yes to a single moment of life, to beauty, to love, to wonder, then in that instant you said yes not just to that feeling, but to the whole of existence. Because nothing happens in isolation. If your soul has ever resonated with joy, then all of history and all of time and all of the cosmos had to align to bring you to that one moment. And in saying yes, you embraced it all and you redeemed it all, and that yes was enough to redeem all of existence. Beautiful, right? Profound. Now, what's he even saying? What do I mean? Like, it sounds good, but what's going on here? Okay, so to start off, the affirmation of life. What am I talking about? That you are here, and that alone is enough to justify your existence and your significance. So what I believe is that life itself is an affirmation. And what I mean by this is that existence happening at all, and that there is being at all, that supports your existence and your value. And that's not in some abstract motivational sense, but in the most basic and undeniable way. That you exist, that is a fact, and that existence itself is not neutral. Like, it exists. It is not nothing, it is something. Now, Albert Camus once wrote about the tender indifference of the world, okay, that we have to engage in our Sisyphean task every day, and that the world just watches on and doesn't provide us with meaning, you know. And I used to very much feel this idea, but as time has gone on and I've thought more about it, I get the sense that there's no indifference from the universe because there's no separation. Right? We're manifestations of the universe. We aren't separate from it. We're a part of it. We are here. We are in nature. Right? Indifference is a projection of our own indifferent dispositions due to how burnt out and grounded down we've been in life, and due to the suffering that is evident everywhere on a daily basis. Right? The indifference that we perceive in the universe is a projection of our own internal worlds, and it doesn't say anything about reality. Right? And what the reality is that life itself exists. You know, that I believe is an affirmation of life. But anyway, why do I think that? We'll get into that. The point of this is that this is about you. And why, for me, the position that makes the most sense to take as a human, I guess the posture and approach that we can take to existence, is that life is something that's fundamentally significant. In my view, meaninglessness and nihilism are symptoms of broken systems and broken people, and not of reality in and of itself. And, you know, maybe it's that, or maybe we just were never really taught what it means to matter. So that's what this is going to be about. So what does it mean to matter? I guess it means to carry value, to be worthy, to be seen and known as something that is meaningful. The problem with this, though, is that mattering is now treated as something that's only meaningful if it is in a material or a logical sense. Now, what I mean by this is that somewhere along the way, mattering became conditional. We've been told that in order to matter, to be significant, we must be something, or provide something, or do something. And the reason that we believe this and that we're told this isn't because we're limited. It's not because we're not living up to a certain standard. That is made up. It's a construction. It's a projection. Right? The reason that we're told that is because the world we grew up in and people at a large scale have failed to understand what it means to be human. We've internalized these negative and limiting messages early on because we're sensitive and social creatures that adapt to what is happening around us, even if that is sometimes to our detriment. Okay, so I'm saying that the messages we're given are made up and not a reflection of reality. Now, why is that? Well, I love talking about systems and I love deconstructing systems. It's very intellectually satisfying. So our systems, like social media and capitalism and religion and psychology and science, were all built by people like you and me who are scared and uncertain and searching for something to hold on to. And these systems became ways to manage complexity by simplifying it. Okay, so these symptoms are ways to manage the complexity of existence by simplifying it. They give us categories and labels and metrics and ways to sort and measure and control, but none of them were designed to hold the full weight of being human. Now, I love a metaphor given by Alan Watts. Okay, so Alan Watts was this old, like philosophy guy, I guess. I don't know how to describe him. But he once used the image of drawing boxes around a squiggle to explain, I guess, what we're doing with reality. Okay, so imagine you've got a piece of paper, and on the paper is a bunch of squiggles. Okay, and the squiggles are reality. The squiggles are life. Okay, it's alive, it's flowing, it's dynamic, it's wild, it's there. Okay? The squiggles are reality. Now, what we do as humans, we come along and we try to make sense of these squiggles by putting boxes around parts of them. We name parts of them. We identify with parts of them. We try to own parts of them. We label them. We try to separate sections. We try to measure them. We try to quantify them. The boxes that we put around the squiggles don't say anything about the squiggles. The boxes say more about our need for control, okay? The boxes say what the boxes say, which still provides some kind of understanding, right? But it doesn't actually really say anything about the squiggles. It says more about us and the boxes. The boxes are arbitrary, okay? The squiggle is what is whole. The squiggle is what really is. Now, similarly, the systems we live in can only ever capture parts of us. The visible parts, the performable parts, the measurable parts. Capitalism notices what you produce. Social media notices what you show. Psychology notices what you struggle with. Science notices what can be quantified. Now, these are very reductive ways to look at these things, but the essence of what I'm saying is that none of these notice you in your entirety. None of these really capture you. As a human being, in your full humanity and depth and contradictions and mystery, these can't be boxed, these can't be scored. You aren't reducible, okay? So, we question the myths and the stories and we deconstruct the systems and the doctrines, and what are we left with after that? We are left with silence, emptiness, where certainty used to be. And that emptiness can feel disorienting. It can feel like nihilism. Like meaning has slipped through our fingers, and the old stories that we used to treat as facts about reality were just made up. Right? This is where nihilism comes into play, which is, starting to believe that nothing matters and that it's all pointless and that we're just here for a short time and we disappear, and that, it's all kind of just nothing. Right? Now, that's one way to see it, but I don't think it's the most honest way to see it. I think it's a very rigid way to see it that makes a lot of assumptions, okay? Because we don't have to get attached to the narrative that the emptiness then is the reality, because that in itself is another myth, that emptiness is all there is, right? I think that the emptiness isn't a void. I think that the emptiness is a space. It's a clearing. It's not a space of absence, but a space of possibility, right? Because when the scaffolding of our beliefs falls away, and when the boxes dissolve, and when the labels lose their grip, what remains isn't nothing. What remains isn't meaninglessness, or purposelessness, or randomness, or chaos. Like, what remains is you and life. The raw, unfiltered fact of existence. Breathing and being and presence, untouched by explanation or labels. And the reason why nihilism comes about is because reason alone and logic alone can't hold this. They can't contain the fullness of being. And so they fall short. Right? Nihilism is a symptom of over-reliance on reason and logic. But reason has its limits. It carves things up, it connects things, it defines things, but it can't contain the fullness of experience. Reason can't capture the depth of experiencing a sunrise, or the ache in your chest when you miss someone or long for something. It can't really measure wonder or awe or sorrow or the texture of being alive. Not all truths can be arrived at logically. They are felt, or they can be felt. So the question of why you matter, I don't think needs to be solved like a puzzle with a beautiful laid out, line of reasoning. I think it's more poetic. All right? And that you don't need a logical reason to exist. You do exist. Okay? You already do. Existence is here. So, moving on. Nihilism is a failure of an over-reliance on reason. It's a falling short, and it's not honest, and it's a giving up, where giving up doesn't need to happen. Okay? Now, why do I say that? Well, I think that when reason reaches its limits, other ways of knowing begin to matter just as much. Now, when I was in year 12 in high school, I did something called the International Baccalaureate, and we studied something called theory of knowledge, and it was, very theoretical and didn't really make sense, but now it's like, it was telling us, and what it taught me was about different ways of knowing other than reason. Okay, that reason and logic aren't the only ways to know things, but because of the systems I've grown up in and the academic nature of my existence, that's what I think, that everything has to be logical and connected and make sense. But things like emotion and intuition and bodily awareness and silence, these are ways of knowing. They're not irrational, they are non-rational. And that's not really a problem. Right? They process information differently, sometimes faster and more holistically than logical reasoning can. And they help us navigate situations where logic alone falls short, like in relationships, in ethics, and when talking about meaning and purpose. Right? The idea that reason is the only valid form of understanding is itself a belief. And that's one often shaped by cultural norms rather than objective truth. Reason can only be justified by reason, which is in itself reasonable. It's circular, right? We say that reason is a good way of finding the truth because it's reasonable, which is based on reason, which is limited, right? Again, it's limited. It doesn't capture the depth of existence. So, the reality is that most important human decisions can't be made through reason alone. Decisions about love, about trust, about identity, about values, reason always has its limits. Now, at some point, every person makes a choice about what kind of truth they want to live by and must make some leap of faith that can't fully be justified. Because the choice isn't always justified through logic. Right? But that doesn't mean that it is completely irrational or not meaningful. Whereas I used to think that it had to be that. It had to be a rational, well thought out position that was, completely watertight and logical and followed discrete steps. But this falls short. It always does. And other ways of knowing are grounded in lived experience and are more closely attuned to the complexity of life. Right? The problem is that we've felt like we need to argue ourselves into believing that we matter. I think what happens, however, is that us mattering is about feeling. Right? I feel that life matters. I feel deeply the potential of human life, the capacity for experience, the depth of what it means to feel things, and that's more than enough. That's way more than enough. And I've found it interesting in myself to notice that just because this isn't a logically well-reasoned position doesn't mean that it isn't valid. It's simply coming from a different kind of knowing, and that where reason falls short, and we notice this and acknowledge this, other parts of our being fill the gaps. So once we've seen that not all truth must come from reason, we begin to see that uncertainty and deconstruction doesn't have to mean collapse and nothingness. That just because something can't be proven doesn't mean that it isn't meaningful, especially when other ways of knowing like intuition and emotion and lived experience, these point to its significance. Now, the thing for me is that at this point I often feel conflicted, and I might say something like, I want to believe in something beyond human, but I don't have the evidence, right? Or, human nature seems to be capable of both cruelty and compassion, but I'm not sure what's truly at the core. Or as a psychologist maybe, I want to believe people can change, but the science feels inconclusive. What I noticed is that but always implies a contradiction, like but. It's conflict based, right? And what it says is that doubt cancels belief and that uncertainty invalidates trust. And I was thinking, like, why do I need to use the word but all the time? What's the justification? And I noticed that the word and doesn't imply contradiction. All right, the word and is more holistic and gentle and synthesizes existence in a more honest way, right? Because what if I say something like, I want to believe in God and I don't have the evidence, and that's okay, right? Or human nature is complex and I'm still trying to understand it. Or I believe in human growth and the capacity for goodness, and I know the data doesn't always make it easy. Or I believe that you matter and that life is inherently significant, and I don't have the logical tools to justify this. The but is invalidating, and I think that again is a symptom of our Western Eurocentric thinking, which is all about domination, right? Which idea is stronger? And it's a poison on the mind. Because and doesn't mean throwing out logic. It means being honest about limits. We still need reason. Alright, we need logic, we need humility, but there comes a point where logic alone can't carry the full weight of the questions that we deeply feel. And when we reach that point, we can choose to rest the burden of justification not on endless evidence, but on deeper things, like presence, intuition, faith, and the experience of being human. And, the word and, it allows us to hold paradox and contradiction, to hold reason and uncertainty, doubt and belief, limitation and meaning. It's a grounded act of synthesis, and it's a way of moving forward when reason runs out of road. So, what I'm saying here is that life is not a problem to be solved. Life is. And that alone is enough. That alone matters. Now, before belief, before doubt, before logic tries to explain or justify anything, there is existence. The fact that something is, rather than nothing, is itself some kind of affirmation. And you are a part of that something. You are a part of this unfolding reality, and you're not separate from it, and you're not accidental to it. You are here too. You don't need to earn significance through reason or success or certainty. Your existence is the significance. You are part of life's yes. Right? The yes that exists simply because there is something. And in saying that, it's important to clarify as well that mattering is not conditional on life. Right? We don't only matter just because we exist, because then that makes life conditional again. It makes mattering conditional. Even nothingness matters. The absence of life matters too. Because stillness and absence and silence are what give shape to presence. Right? Nothingness and existence are not opposites but companions. They're two sides of the same coin. We need both to make sense of either. And to hold them together is not contradiction but wholeness. Non-being is not a denial, but it's the space within which life emerges. So mattering doesn't rely on the condition of existence even. Mattering doesn't rely on the condition of existence. What is true is that you matter and you suffer. Life is full and it is fragile. There is being and there is nothingness. And we must recognize and accept these tensions to allow life to be as full as it can be. Because logic and reason can't contain these paradoxes. It goes beyond reason. Now, even suffering, right, and pain and loss, these are not flaws in the fabric of life, nor are these something to be glorified. It's simply there. It's a part of the whole, just as joy is. Without pain, we wouldn't know relief. Without sorrow, we wouldn't know tenderness. And I'm not trying to say that suffering is meaningful, right? In the sense of that it has a purpose or that it's, teaching us something. Suffering just is. It's real. And to affirm life isn't to deny suffering, but to include it in the affirmation, not because we choose to suffer, and not because we choose to affirm it, but because we can't choose without it. We can't choose without suffering. Like, it's part of the fabric of existence. It's part of it. So we use and instead of but, and we use life itself, and we use ways of knowing beyond reason to find value. Not through proof and not through certainty, but through participation and being. Right? You are here, and because you're here, you matter. Not only are we affirmed by existing, but then we as humans have the ability to affirm ourselves too. That's the capacity we have as humans. But this isn't some task. To affirm being, all you have to do is be. Right? To affirm being human, to matter, all you have to do is be. Let me rephrase that as well. You don't have to do anything. Because we're talking about all this information, and then I see this and I wonder, what should I do? Like, I know all these things, but what should I do? Right? Nothing necessarily. There's no should. There's no rule book. There's existence and there's you alive within it. And you are here not to fulfill a condition, right? You are here, and what you do with that is up to you. And all any of us can do is respond to the mystery in some way. Now, to me, that means being honest and authentic and relational, right? To live not just as an individual, but to serve others. To notice what prevents me from being myself, what prevents me from feeling connected to others, what prevents me from feeling connected to the world around me. It means identifying the stories and the fears and the myths and the expectations that tell me that I must become something in order to be worthy. To notice these things and to transcend them and become who I really am. Right, so it's not about fixing yourself. It's about uncovering what's already here within you. And what might that mean for you? Like, what are the implications of this? When I see this, I think that you don't have to perform to justify your worth, that you can rest, you can create, you can speak honestly, you can make mistakes, you can grieve, you can love, you can do what you need to do justice to who you are. Right? And people who criticize this and judge this, I believe, are lacking in themselves. And that any action or word that intentionally judges or harms another person always comes from a place of fear or insecurity and lack. We're inherently social creatures. Right? We have the capacity to hurt each other or to help each other. But I think the hurting comes from a place of weakness, always. And that real strength is love and compassion and empathy. And that's what it takes to really engage with what it means to be human in a world surrounded by people and systems that are somewhat hollow and have been misled. So, to conclude, this has been a bit all over the shop, and I'm trying to formulate it myself, and maybe you can help me make more sense of it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that you are here, and that life is here, and that alone means you matter. Before belief and before doubt and before logic, there is existence. The fact that something is doesn't need external justification. It itself is the justification. And you are part of that something. You're not separate from this unfolding reality, and you're not accidental to it, and you're not random. You're here. Before we label anything or judge anything, you are here. And the bare, undeniable, raw fact of existence is, Now, the difficulty is that this reality includes pain and suffering and loss and harsh, often cruel experiences that resist satisfying explanation or meaning. Now, those realities aren't optional or avoidable. They're undeniable parts of what it means to live in the world. And acknowledging suffering doesn't require us to find silver linings or justify the injustice of events, like tragedy or violence. It means holding the truth that life is complex and that sometimes it's going to be unbearably difficult. And that's the truth. Now, the presence of suffering doesn't negate your value or the meaning inherent in existence itself, nor does it reduce the significance of joy and love and hope. Instead, the fullness of being includes all of these elements, without one cancelling out the other. These are what make life what it is. These are what life is. So you don't need to earn significance through reason or success or certainty. Your existence is the significance. You are part of life's original yes. The yes that exists simply because there is something instead of nothing. And even then, the nothing is the space within which the something can exist. It's all important. It all matters. Nothingness matters because it gives shape to presence. Right? They're not in conflict, they are companions. And we need both to make sense of either. And it's also important that we use and we use life itself to find value. We use and instead of but, because this synthesizes, it opens, and it does more justice and is a more honest evaluation and approach to the human condition. And I'll finish with, that little Nietzschean flourish to say again something like, if you say yes to life, if you say yes to even one moment, one breath of joy or one glimpse of love, then you've said yes to yourself and you've said yes to all of existence, for nothing stands alone. Every part of you is made from all that came before. So when you say yes to life even once, all of eternity is embraced, redeemed, and affirmed. But that's not an expectation on you. You don't have to affirm life. If that is what feels natural to you, as it does to me, then go for it. And at the same time, it's about what works for you. The expectation is that there is no expectation. Right? You do what works for you, and you matter, regardless of what that is. I'm saying that not only are we already affirmed by existing, but we have the ability to affirm it ourselves too. And that is the capacity we have as humans. This isn't a task, it's not an obligation. To affirm being, all you have to do is be. And that is it. That is why I know that you matter. Yeah.